Hi everybody, Aaron again. I wanted to give you a short show and tell about how we boil our sap at Stockton University. This will help you with a little bit of insight on how to get your sap going. First and foremost, you have to understand this is a messy process. The big guys up in Vermont, New York, Canada, they have this fine tune where they have everything tight, and they've been doing this for a long time. At Stockton University and probably at your own place, don't worry if things are messy and sticky by the end of the season. It means that you've learned and that you're successful. So, just a quick show and tell. I know our sugar shack is a little messy. We have an intake pipe up here that's bringing in sap from a storage tank up top. We'll walk outside and I'll show that to you. And it's coming down into here. Following, and then we have a pan right here where the sap is coming into, and this is a control valve right here. You can see that if I push down on this, sap starts coming in a little bit more, and that way it keeps the level of sap in our back pan right here at a steady level. Now, we have a raging fire going on, and this fire, you can see that we've stuffed the entire furnace with wood. We want to get this fire as hot as possible, because what's happening is, that's Shelby right there, my assistant. You can see that we're losing a ton of steam, which is good. We're boiling off our sap. So once it is boiling in our back pan over here, it's a raging boil. If I were to open this up, there would just be a massive amount of boiling going on. There is a control valve over here. Come on, Shelby, I'm going to show them. There's a control valve over here that is bringing in the concentrated sap from the back pan. There's a float valve right here, and if I push down, you can see that syrup is coming in. Back up. So this pan right here, you might see, has a maze in it. Try to show them the maze. You can see how it's a maze. Don't hold it over the steam, otherwise we'll get the camera cloudy. This maze right here, the sap comes in on this side and it flows like this. And the reason why it does that is because the less dense liquid over here, the sap, is coming in and it's pushing the more dense liquid, the syrup, through the maze. So it's like we have a very, very long sap run. And then over here, we have, theoretically, syrup. And this is where we would draw off. Now, how do you know if what you have is syrup? There's lots of different ways of telling. One way is the spoon test. You put like a cold spoon into the refrigerator. You put a spoon into the refrigerator, make it cold, and then you dip it in the syrup. And if it sort of solidifies on the spoon, or if it drizzles off of the spoon in like a syrupy consistency, then you know that it's syrup. You could also put a plate in the freezer. They do this for jelly and jam. You put a plate in the freezer, and then you stick a little bit of the hot sap onto the cold plate, and if it congeals, if it solidifies, you know that you're approximately syrup. Another way of doing it, hold on, Shelby, I'll get this. Is with a test cup and a hydrometer. Now, the hydrometer is the surefire way of telling what your density is. So the hydrometer has two red lines on it. You can see one red line, two red lines. The top red line is the hot test line, and the bottom one is the cold test line. If you're working with hot syrup, you almost always want the hot test line. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill up our test cup with syrup. Don't let it overflow like I did just before this video. Fill up our test cup with syrup. You want it almost full. And then you try to float, and it's okay if it overflows a little bit, just let it overflow back in your syrup. You let this go and you let it float. And if it floats right around that hot test line, then you know it's the correct percentage for your syrup. That's about 65% syrup. Our syrup is not there yet, so watch what happens if I just drop this in. Goes straight down the bottom, doesn't float. So we're a ways off from syrup at this point. And then you can just pour this stuff back in. Remember, you're boiling everything, so everything is going to be sterile. Just make sure that you rinse off the hydrometer after each use, because if there's any residual sugar on the hydrometer, it'll change your reading the next time. So you just want to keep a bucket of water around to rinse everything off after each time that you do this. All right? And then once you get syrup, You don't have to do anything to it. You want to filter it if you can. You don't have to. Some people don't do that. If you don't filter it, you might get a little bit of what's called sugar sand at the bottom, which is not bad. It just is a little gritty and doesn't taste good. It's not contaminant. It's the result of a reaction when you're boiling sap. And a lot of people just choose to filter it out. If you do filter it, you can use an old T-shirt, or you can try to use like a, they call them Orlon bag filters. Whatever you use, just make sure it's fine enough to catch that sugar sand. And then you can put it straight into the bottle. If you use the hydrometer method, you get to 65%. At 65%, it's shelf stable. You can leave it out in the refrigerator. It might grow a very thin layer of mold at the very top, but you can just discard that. The rest of the syrup is perfectly fine. I've only had that happen to one batch. And then you have syrup. That's it. Thanks, Shelby.